You've been programmed to believe that successful people have easy lives, that strong people never struggle, and that if you're facing hard times, you must be doing something wrong. This is the most dangerous lie in our society, and it's keeping you weak. Every person you admire, every leader you respect, every achiever you look up to has failed more times than you've even tried. They've been broken, defeated, and knocked down repeatedly. The difference isn't that they avoided problems. It's that they used problems as fuel instead of letting problems use them as victims. Your struggles aren't evidence of your failure. They're proof that you're being prepared for something bigger than your current circumstances. Maria thought she had life figured out. Working 2 jobs to support her 8-year-old daughter, she had finally saved enough to move them out of her mother's cramped apartment into their own place. The lease was signed, boxes were packed, and for the first time in years, she felt like she was winning. Then Monday morning came. Her manager called her into the office and told her the company was downsizing. Her position was eliminated immediately. By Wednesday, her second job at the restaurant cut her hours to almost nothing because business was slow. By Friday, she couldn't make the first month's rent on the new apartment. The landlord kept her deposit. Within 1 week, Maria went from feeling like she was finally getting ahead to sleeping on her mother's couch again, watching her daughter ask why they couldn't move to their new home after all. But here's what Maria didn't know, that Friday night as she cried herself to sleep. Here's what none of us know when life hits us with those devastating combinations that leave us gasping for air. That moment when everything falls apart isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of discovering who you really are. When the comfortable masks get ripped away and the safety nets disappear. See, life has this way of testing us that we never see coming. You wake up one morning thinking you know exactly where you're headed, and by nightfall, you're in a completely different reality. Maybe it's not losing a job like Maria. Maybe it's the phone call from the doctor with test results that change everything. Maybe it's walking into your house and finding divorce papers on the kitchen table. Maybe it's looking at your bank account and realizing the money you thought was there has vanished. Maybe it's watching someone you love slip away despite all your prayers and efforts to hold them close. Life doesn't send you a memo saying, "Get ready. Hard times are coming next Tuesday at 3 p.m. It just shows up. And when it does, it reveals something profound about human nature. Some people crumble under pressure. They fall like a house of cards in a strong wind. But others discover strength they never knew they possessed. They find power in places they never thought to look. What makes the difference? What separates those who break from those who break through? It's not what you might think. It's not about having more money in the bank or better connections or lucky breaks. It's not about being smarter or more educated or coming from the right family. I've seen wealthy people destroy themselves over minor setbacks, while I've watched people with nothing find ways to build everything. I've seen highly educated individuals fall apart when their plans don't work out, while others who never finish school figure out solutions that amaze everyone around them. I also think there are many elements of this country. I think we do little, proud and made poor. There are many children that lack. The difference is understanding something most people never learn. Most people think strength means avoiding problems. They think being strong means having a life where nothing goes wrong. They measure their success by how many difficulties they can sidestep, how many challenges they can avoid, how smooth they can make their path. But that's not strength. That's fragility disguised as success. Real strength shows up when you can't avoid the problem anymore. Real strength emerges when the storm is so big that there's nowhere to hide from it. Real strength is discovered when you're in the middle of the mess and you have to make a choice. Am I going to let this destroy me, or am I going to let this develop me? Maria made that choice, not immediately. For weeks she felt sorry for herself. She was angry at her former bosses, angry at the economy, angry at life for being unfair. She spent days wondering why everything happened to her right when things seemed to be improving. But then something shifted. She realized that sitting in her mother's living room feeling bitter wasn't changing anything. The situation was what it was. The only question left was what she was going to do about it. She started looking for work with a different attitude. Instead of just trying to replace what she had lost, she began asking herself what she really wanted to build. She noticed skills she had developed over the years that she had never considered valuable. She was good with people. She was organized. She could solve problems under pressure. She had learned to manage time and resources better than most people because she had to. Within 3 months, Maria wasn't just employed again. She had started her own small business, helping other working mothers organize their schedules and manage their households. The crisis that seemed like her ending became her beginning. This is what I want you to understand. The moment when life gets hard isn't happening to destroy you, it's happening to reveal you. Inside every difficulty is information about your capacity that you couldn't access any other way. Inside every setback is intelligence about your capabilities that comfort never teaches you. Inside every crisis is character that smooth sailing never develops. Right now, someone listening to these words is in the middle of their own storm. You're facing something that feels bigger than you can handle. You're dealing with pressure that seems like it might crush you. You're wondering if you have what it takes to make it through. Let me tell you something. You wouldn't be facing it if you didn't have the strength to handle it. Life doesn't give you challenges you can't overcome. It gives you challenges that require you to become who you were meant to be. But here's the key. Strength isn't something you have. Strength is something you choose every single day, in every single situation. You get to decide. Am I going to respond from my fears or from my faith in my own capabilities? Am I going to make decisions based on what I'm afraid might happen or based on what I know is possible when I apply everything I've learned? Am I going to let this situation define me, or am I going to use this situation to refine me? Now, I need to tell you something that might surprise you. Most of what we've been taught about strength is completely wrong. We've been programmed to believe that strong people never struggle, that successful people never fail, that powerful people never feel weak. We see them on social media, in magazines, on television, and they look like they have it all together. They smile confidently, they speak with certainty, they appear to move through life without breaking a sweat, and we think that's what strength looks like. This is a lie that's destroying more lives than any other misconception I know. I want you to think about a tree for a moment. Which tree is stronger? The one that grows in perfect conditions with steady water, rich soil, and gentle breezes, or the one that grows on the side of a mountain, battered by storms, struggling for every drop of water, fighting for survival in rocky ground? The mountain tree develops deep roots. Its trunk becomes thick and sturdy. Its branches learn to bend without breaking. The sheltered tree might look prettier, but when the real storm comes, which one survives? This is exactly what happens with human beings. The people who appear to have the easiest lives often have the least capacity to handle real difficulty when it shows up. They've never had to develop the internal muscles that come from pushing through challenges. They've never learned to find solutions when there are no obvious answers. They've never discovered what they're capable of when they have no choice but to be capable. But society has taught us to hide our struggles. We've been trained to pretend everything is fine even when it's not. We post the highlights on social media and keep the hard parts private. We show up to work with a smile even when we cried in the car in the parking lot. We tell people we're doing great when we're barely holding on. This performance of perfection isn't making us stronger, it's making us weaker. Real strength admits when things are difficult. Real strength says, this is hard, and I'm going to figure out how to handle it. Real strength doesn't pretend problems don't exist. It faces them head on and asks, what can this teach me that I couldn't learn any other way? I've spent decades studying successful people, and here's what I've discovered. Every single person who has accomplished something significant has failed more times than most people have even tried. Every entrepreneur has had businesses that didn't work. Every leader has made decisions that turned out wrong. Every innovator has created things that nobody wanted. Every strong person has been weak, scared, and uncertain more often than they've been confident and sure. The difference isn't that they avoided failure. The difference is how they responded to failure. While most people treat failure as evidence that they should quit, strong people treat failure as tuition for the education they need to succeed. While most people see setbacks as signs they're on the wrong path, strong people see setbacks as information about how to find the right path. There's a woman named Rosa who learned this lesson the hard way. She opened a bakery after years of dreaming about being her own boss. She invested her life savings, worked 16-hour days, and believed with all her heart that her passion for baking would be enough. 6 months later, she was bankrupt. The location was wrong. Her pricing was off. She had no experience with business management, and her beautiful pastries weren't enough to overcome her mistake. Rosa could have decided that entrepreneurship wasn't for her. She could have concluded that she should stick to safe employment for the rest of her life. Instead, she did something different. She treated her failure as the best business education she could have received. She studied what went wrong. She learned about location analysis, pricing strategy, inventory management, and customer service. She worked for other bakeries to understand how successful ones operated. 2 years later, she opened again, this time. She succeeded beyond her original dreams. The first Rosa was passionate but unprepared. The second Rosa was passionate and prepared. The failure didn't make her weak, it made her strong. The setback didn't end her story, it educated her for the next chapter. This is what I want you to understand. Your struggles aren't evidence of your weakness. They are the gymnasium where your strength is being developed. Your failures aren't proof that you should quit. They are lessons that are preparing you for success. Your difficulties aren't punishments for doing something wrong. They are opportunities to discover capabilities you didn't know you had. Let me tell you about James. He was riding high in the real estate business, making more money in a month than most people make in a year. He had the big house, the expensive cars, the respect of his peers. He thought he was untouchable. Then the market crashed. Not just a little dip, but a complete collapse. Within 18 months, James lost everything. The house was foreclosed. The cars were repossessed. His business partners disappeared. His fair weather friends stopped returning his calls. He found himself sleeping on his brother's couch at 45 years old, wondering how his life had fallen apart so completely. But James's story didn't end there. It began there. When you lose everything external, you're forced to find what's internal. When all the props are removed, you discover what you're actually built on. James realized that his entire identity had been tied to his possessions and his position. He had never developed himself as a person because he was too busy developing his portfolio. The crash didn't just take his money, it revealed that he had built his life on a foundation that couldn't withstand real pressure. This is what happens in the transformation process. First, life strips away everything that isn't truly you. It removes the masks. the pretenses, the false securities. This phase feels like destruction, but it's actually preparation. You can't build something genuine on a foundation of fantasy. The storm has to clear the ground before you can lay a foundation that will last. James spent the first few months feeling sorry for himself, angry at the market, angry at his former partners, angry at circumstances beyond his control. But eventually, he realized that anger was just wasted energy. The situation was what it was. The only question left was what he was going to do about it. He started asking different questions. Instead of why did this happen to me, he asked, what can I learn from this? Instead of how do I get back what I lost, he asked, what should I build that's better than what I had? Instead of focusing on what was taken from him, he focused on what was still available to him. James discovered he had skills he had never fully utilized. He was excellent at analyzing properties, understanding market trends, and seeing potential that others missed. But instead of using these skills just to make money for himself, he decided to use them to help other people avoid the mistakes he had made. He started teaching real estate investment courses, helping people understand both the opportunities and the risks. He began consulting with individuals who wanted to build wealth but didn't want to lose everything if the market shifted. Within 3 years, James had built something more valuable than what he had lost. Not just financially, though he was doing well again, he had built a business based on genuine value, relationships built on trust, and a reputation based on wisdom rather than just success. The man who emerged from the crash was stronger, wiser, and more valuable than the man who went into it. This is the transformation process. It's not comfortable, it's not quick, it's not pretty, but it's necessary. Every butterfly was once a caterpillar that thought the world was ending when it went into the cocoon. Every diamond was once a piece of coal that handled pressure better than it expected to. Every oak tree was once an acorn that held its ground during the storm. The process has 3 stages. First, disruption breaks down what isn't working. Second, reconstruction builds something better on a stronger foundation. Third, integration combines your old wisdom with your new strength to create capabilities you never had before. James went through all 3 stages. The crash disrupted his comfortable illusions. The struggle reconstructed his character and priorities. The recovery integrated his old skills with his new wisdom to create something genuinely valuable. Right now, someone listening is in the middle of their own transformation process. You might be in the disruption phase, watching everything fall apart. Don't panic. This is preparation, not punishment. You might be in the reconstruction phase, slowly building something new from the pieces that remain. Don't rush. Good foundations take time. You might be in the integration phase, combining who you were with who you're becoming. Don't settle. The best version of yourself is still emerging. Now let's talk about something practical. How do you build a kind of inner strength that doesn't depend on your circumstances? How do you develop the mental toughness that stays steady whether life is going well or falling apart? This isn't about positive thinking or pretending problems don't exist. This is about developing real internal capacity that serves you when you need it most. Strength is built the same way physical muscle is built, through consistent resistance training every day. Life gives you small opportunities to choose strength over weakness, courage over fear, growth over comfort. Most people miss these opportunities because they're waiting for big moments to prove themselves. But big moments reveal who you already are. Small moments create who you become. When your alarm goes off in the morning and you don't feel like getting up, that's resistance training for your discipline. When someone treats you poorly and you choose to respond with dignity instead of reacting with anger, That's resistance training for your character. When you face a problem and you choose to look for solutions instead of focusing on complaints, that's resistance training for your problem-solving capacity. The strongest people I know have learned to make decisions from their commitments, not their feelings. They understand that feelings change, circumstances shift, but commitments provide stability. When you decide in advance how you're going to respond to difficulty, you don't have to figure it out in the middle of the crisis when your thinking isn't clear and your emotions are running high. This means developing what I call response patterns. Instead of reacting automatically to stress, you create intentional responses that move you forward. When pressure comes, instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You automatically ask, what can I learn from this? When setbacks occur, instead of thinking, this isn't fair, you automatically think, how can I use this? When people disappoint you, instead of focusing on what they did wrong, you automatically focus on what you can do right. These response patterns don't happen overnight. They're developed through practice during small situations, so they're available during big situations. The person who handles major crises with grace is usually someone who has learned to handle minor inconveniences with patience. The person who finds solutions under extreme pressure is usually someone who has practiced creative thinking when the stakes were low. There's also something powerful about morning routines. Not because there's magic in the morning, but because starting your day with intentional choices sets the tone for everything that follows. When you begin each day by doing something that requires discipline, even something small, you remind yourself that you have the power to choose. Your responses, regardless of how you feel, maybe it's making your bed even when you're running late. Maybe it's reading something that feeds your mind instead of immediately checking your phone. Maybe it's taking 5 minutes to think about what you want to accomplish instead of just reacting to whatever demands attention first. These aren't life-changing activities by themselves, but they're strength-building activities that prepare you for when life-changing challenges show up. The key is understanding that your response to small problems determines your capacity for big problems. If you fall apart when your coffee order is wrong, you're not going to handle well when your job is eliminated. If you get angry when traffic is heavy, you're not prepared for when relationships get difficult. If you give up when simple tasks become complicated, you won't persist when important goals require sustained effort. Strong people practice strength when it's easy, so it's available when it's hard. They build mental muscles during calm seasons, so those muscles are ready during storm seasons. They develop response patterns during minor challenges, so those patterns are automatic during major crises. Let me tell you about Eleanor. She was 28 years old, newly married, with dreams of becoming a professional dancer. She had spent her entire life preparing for this career, training since she was 5 years old, sacrificing social events and comfortable choices to pursue her passion. She had just landed a spot with a prestigious dance company when everything changed in a single moment. Elena was driving home from rehearsal on a rainy Tuesday evening when a drunk driver ran a red light and slammed into her car. She woke up in the hospital 3 days later to learn that her spine had been severely damaged. The doctors told her she would never walk again, let alone dance. In one instant, everything she had worked for, everything she had planned, everything that defined who she was taken away. The first months were the darkest of Elena's life. She was angry at the drunk driver, angry at fate, angry at a world that would allow such unfairness. She had been living responsibly, following her dreams, doing everything right. And this was her reward. She went through physical therapy, not because she believed it would help, but because everyone expected her to try. She spoke to counselors, not because she wanted to heal, But because her family insisted, she was going through the motions of recovery while inside she felt completely broken. But something began to shift during those therapy sessions. Elena started meeting other people who had experienced life-changing accidents and injuries. She met veterans who had lost limbs in combat, children who had been born with disabilities, adults who had suffered strokes or other medical crises. What surprised her wasn't their pain, which she expected, but their strength, which she didn't. There was Marcus, a former construction worker who had lost both legs in a workplace accident, who was now training other amputees to use prosthetics. There was Linda, who had been paralyzed in a skiing accident, who had become an advocate for accessibility rights and had helped change laws in 3 states. There was David, a teenager with cerebral palsy, who was funnier and more optimistic than most people Elena had known, who had no physical challenges at all. Elena began to realize something profound. These people hadn't been healed from their circumstances. They had been healed through their circumstances. Their limitations hadn't ended their stories. Their limitations had redirected their stories towards something they never would have discovered otherwise. Slowly, Elena started asking different questions. Instead of, why did this happen to me? She began asking, what can I do with what I have left? Instead of focusing on what she couldn't do anymore, she started exploring what she could do that she had never considered before. Instead of mourning the dancer she would never be, she began discovering the person she was becoming. Elena realized that her years of dance training had given her a deep understanding of movement, rhythm, and the connection between physical expression and emotional healing. She also realized that her experience of sudden loss and gradual acceptance had given her insights into trauma and recovery that textbooks couldn't teach. She began combining these 2 areas of knowledge in ways that surprised everyone, including herself. She started working with other people who had experienced physical trauma, using modified movement and rhythm exercises to help them reconnect with their bodies in positive ways. She developed techniques that help people find grace and expression even within their limitations. She created programs that use music and gentle movement to help trauma survivors process emotions that words couldn't reach. What began as Elena's personal healing journey became a method that helped hundreds of other people. She wrote books about finding purpose through pain. She spoke at conferences about resilience and adaptation. She developed training programs for therapists who worked with trauma survivors. She consulted with hospitals and rehabilitation centers to improve their programs. 5 years after her accident, Elena was invited to speak at the same dance company where she had once planned to perform. She rolled onto that stage in her wheelchair and told her story to a room full of young dancers who had the same dreams she once had. But instead of talking about what she had lost, she talked about what she had found. Instead of describing what had been taken from her, she described what had been given to her through the experience. Elena told those young dancers that her accident had been the most devastating and the most valuable thing that had ever happened to her. It had ended one story, but it had begun a better story. It had closed one door, but it had opened doors she never knew existed. It had taken away her ability to dance on stage, but it had given her the ability to help other people dance through their own difficulties. This is what I want you to understand about the purpose behind your pain. Every difficulty you face is developing something in you that the world needs. Every struggle you overcome is preparing you to help someone else overcome a similar struggle. Every lesson you learn through hardship is wisdom that can guide someone else through their own hard times. Your pain is not pointless. Your struggles are not meaningless. Your difficulties are not just obstacles to overcome. They are preparation for contribution. They are training for significance. They are education for influence right now. You might be in the middle of something that feels like it's destroying you. You might be facing circumstances that seem unfair, challenges that seem too big, losses that seem unbearable. But what you're going through is not just about what you're going through. It's about who you're becoming and what you'll be able to give to the world because of what you've learned. Eleanor's greatest contribution to the world came not despite her tragedy, but because of it. Her deepest impact happened not when life was easy, but when she learned to be strong when life got hard. And somewhere right now, someone needs exactly what your difficulty is teaching you. Someone needs the strength you're developing, the wisdom you're gaining, the character you're building. Your next difficult moment isn't your punishment, it's your preparation. It's not your ending, it's your beginning. The world is waiting for what your strength will make possible.